Hello and welcome to Architecture, Design, and Photography. Today we are speaking to Rob Hann. Rob was born in Salisbury, England, and is a self-taught photographer. In 1993, Rob shot his first commission, a portrait of Lydia Lunch for Lime Lizard magazine. It was the first of over 900 commissions for many leading magazines, newspapers, and record companies. Rob has 7 photographs in the permanent collection of the National Portrait Gallery in London. Since 2010, Rob has turned exclusively to road trip photography throughout the United States. His photographs have been included in several group shows and had his first solo show at Christian Larsen Gallery in Stockholm, Sweden in November 2013, and his first solo museum show at Näsjö Konsthall in Näsjö, Sweden in June 2018. Rob's first book, Diesel Fried Chicken, was published by the Artist Edition in 2018. Limited edition prints are available through Click Gallery in New York City and Larsen Warner Gallery in Stockholm. I'm excited to speak to Rob today because he is currently doing what I would like to do for a living, wandering around taking many photographs of kind of road trip street photography. Love it. I came across his stuff because he has a picture from Grand Forks, North Dakota, the place where I was born and lived for about a month and have never been back. And it was a really cool Bob's Oil kind of photograph in a big open lot with a bunch of snow in the background. Kind of ugly, but kind of beautiful and creepy and wonderful at the same time. Rob Hann, welcome to Architecture, Design, and Photography. How you doing today?
I'm doing fine, thanks, Trent. Thanks for having me on.
So the quick, for people who are listening, the quick story to how I got to talking to you is that I was just scrolling through Instagram and saw Bob's Oil on one of your posts, a photograph you had taken from Grand Forks, North Dakota. I was born in Grand Forks, and I think my parents lived there for like a month longer after I was born, and I've never been back. But it was just really interesting to see something from a place that I've always known about but don't remember, and in taking a photograph in a way that I would like to take it and remember it and see it. It was a little bit of a moment for me, like, whoa, North Dakota, Grand Forks. But then to see the rest of your work, for me, was very interesting because we had been to a lot of the same places and seemed to have been interested in a lot of the same subjects. Now, I'm a commercial architectural photographer currently, wishing that I was making a living a little bit more so doing what you do. So I was excited to get you on to hear about your process from picking up a camera to where you are today. So
Cool. So I didn't buy a camera, with the idea of being a photographer until I was 31 years old. I'd left school at 16, worked on the family farm, did lots of different jobs. I was a firefighter in London, and for a while, and then I was in the United States in the first half of the 80s. I was living in New York and in Austin, Texas, and I was just doing, restaurant work and stuff like that. I became a bike messenger in New York City.
Nice.
And in that period, I was in. It's kind of a long story. I was in a restaurant one evening in New York City with a friend, and a guy came to my table. He said he was a fashion designer, and did I want to, would I be in his show that he had coming up? I didn't know who that guy was, but my friend told me he was Willie Smith, who at the time was African American, kind of a rising kind of new kid on the block, was really making waves. And so I did it. It was this big show with Iman, people like this in it. And then I got on my bike and carried on being a bike messenger. But long story short, they got in touch and they said, you're photogenic and maybe you consider doing, being a model. And so I did that, and I ended up I moved to Milan in Italy, and I started being a model. But I was already 30 and then 31 by the time I was in Milan. And I was thinking, how long could this last? This seemed, it was an adventure, but what can I do after this? And so I was in that world, and I was surrounded by photographers, photography. I wasn't a photographer myself, but I enjoyed looking at photography, and I think I always had. And I was quite good at art at school, and I had kind of, I had an aesthetic sensibility where I was judging images, and I liked this and I didn't like that. And I thought, well, maybe I could be a photographer. And so I bought a camera, and I just started photographing friends who were other models at the time. The partner I was with, she wasn't keen on me getting into that world and photographing women models. And so I thought, okay, I'll shoot like men's fashion, because at that time I was in Milan, it was quite a big thing. There were quite a few men's fashion magazines. And so I basically put together a portfolio, and the modeling did carry on for like 10 years. And I was surprisingly successful. It surprised me at least, because I never really looked like a typical model, but I guess I had something going on that people liked. And, so I was 31 then. By the time I was 38, I'd had a spell in Paris. My partner and I, we'd moved to London. The modeling work was kind of dropping off, and the type of work I was getting wasn't so good. And so I had a portfolio. I started going out to see magazines and show them my work. And it was portraits. In the meantime, the whole idea of being a fashion photographer, I'd kind of gone off of that idea fairly early on. The whole world was less exciting to me, and I'd been to see an Irving Penn exhibition, a big retrospective. It started at MoMA. I think I actually saw it on a trip to London at the Victoria and Albert Museum, and I bought the catalogue, and the portraits were just fantastic and fascinated me. And I used to sit there and leaf through it and like look at that, like every night. And he'd photographed anyone you could imagine, creative people in that period. And I thought, maybe I could do that, because the pictures I was taking anyway were much more portrait-like than fashion pictures. Mm. And I thought also he'd met all these people. He'd spent time with Picasso and with anybody you could think of. And so I thought that would be a cool thing to do. And so I presented myself as a portrait photographer. And because I was in that world, with magazines and everything, that was the market I was aiming at. And so I got my first breaks with music photography, actually. And I worked for several years shooting initially for music magazines, record companies. I started shooting I was in London at the time, started shooting for, kind of like Sunday supplements for newspapers, just doing portraits of mostly creative people, writers, directors, actors, musicians, as well as I was still doing the music stuff. And then I moved to New York in 2003, was still doing that, kind of being like, their man in New York, doing pictures. But a couple of years before moving to New York, I was aware that, I was taking photographs, but it was all work. And I had this kind of itch to just do something for myself, find some personal project that I could be more invested in. I wasn't just trying to do something for someone else, even though I was trying to put myself into that work. Ultimately, I had to please, a picture editor, a client, a record company. And so I thought, it'd be freeing to just do something for myself. But I wasn't very excited by what I was seeing around me in London. And I couldn't really come up with a project that I thought would be good. So one night I was at home. It was like a winter's night. I'm watching the TV. The rain's lashing on the window, and there was a show on the TV called This Is Modern Art, where this kind of very wry, deadpan guy was explaining the world of modern art to the layman. And on this show, he actually traveled out to Marfa, Texas, where he was talking about Donald Judd, minimalist sculptor. And he's driving along in this open-top car on this high desert road, giant blue sky. And I was like, wow, that looks cool. I want to be there.
Meanwhile, you're in a flat in New York City or London, and it's raining.
I was in London, yeah. This was a couple of years before I'd moved to New York. And so I kind of remember this show. I couldn't even remember the name of the town, Marfa, but, a few months later I Googled Art Town, West Texas, and I took a trip. I flew to Los Angeles, rented a car, and I drove down to Marfa and back. And it was, I think it was about a 2-week trip. And that was when, the first night I stayed in a cheap motel in Joshua Tree, where we actually have a home now, another home. But on that first day, I started taking pictures. I think the first picture I took on the first roll of film was this kind of abandoned gas station out in the desert. And I liked the look of that.
Black 24-hour fuel one, was it?
No, that was a few years later. Yeah, no, this was out on Highway 62, which is, it's wild that there's a gas station there, but I guess before they built I-10, people used to use that road a lot more, because now it's like super desolate out there. There's almost nothing at all. But it had a cool aesthetic to me. And I thought, okay, I like this. This could, maybe this could be a book. When you're spending a lot of time on your own, all this stuff kind of runs around in your head. And that was basically the start of this road trip photography. 2 years later, I moved. So I think I did one more trip whilst I was still in England, because when I got home, I thought, okay, I got some cool stuff here, but, I think I need to take another trip to fill it out, to be able to have this book. So a couple of years later, I guess a kind of a bit of a midlife crisis thing. I thought, am I going to just get old in London or have another adventure? So I moved to New York with like 2 bags. I had to, get a place to live, make sure I had work, get legal, and all of this stuff. But it was, it excited me. I guess I'd got in a bit of a rut, and I wanted some new stimulation. And so that's what I did, and I just kept taking the trips. And it actually took me 17 years of taking trips before the book actually came to be. That book was Diesel Fried Chicken. And anyway, so I'm still taking the trips. In the meantime, this is a very long answer to your question.
This is great.
All right. So in the meantime, the work I was doing for magazines and record companies, that was getting pretty thin on the ground. Print magazines were really having a hard time. Some of them were going out of business. there was less work, they were paying less. The same thing with the record companies, because at that time, the whole thing, I think like Napster came in and people were getting their music for free, and the record business hadn't figured out how they could still make money. And so that work was going away too, or the money was poor. So after a few years of this, I was getting in debt and pretty uncomfortable. Fun. And I knew I had to do something. I had to pivot to something, but I was kind of slow to make that move. But I got to a point where I felt I felt pretty desperate. And I was living in New York City, and I started, well, I guess I'd always seen these people. There were people on the street selling their work, artists and things like that. So I thought, well, maybe, I've got this body of work I've been building for years, the road trip stuff. Maybe I could try to sell some of that stuff. And, it's prints, affordable small prints. And so I did it. I got a table and I set up in Soho on Prince Street, and people started buying it. It started working. And initially, I just thought, well, maybe it can help pay the rent. I'd been out there, 2 or 3 months, when there was a French woman called Christiane Sell, had what at the time was a gallery, a photo gallery and bookstore called Click, C-L-I-C. Mm-hmm. And she saw me on the street and she said, I like this stuff. Maybe we can start selling large prints of this. And I'd had other people, kind of, they had like some, some little framing store out in Long Island or something. And I just didn't get involved. But I could tell that she seemed, that this could be a good thing, could be serious. And so started doing that. And those prints started to sell. And maybe a month later, a guy called Christian Larsen from Stockholm, who had and has a Chelsea-style gallery in Stockholm, stopped by and really liked the work. And he actually bought 14 large limited edition prints from me, paid me upfront before I'd even made the prints or anything. Gave me a show in Stockholm, and I've had another show with him, and I had a museum show off of the back of that. And so at this point, I'm like, well, okay, this is working. I was selling on the street on the weekends. I was selling the big limited edition prints, and I was still getting some of the other work, the commissioned work, but somehow in my head, I couldn't handle being both. I was kind of tired of the other thing, which I had enjoyed, and it had been great in many ways, but I was kind of over it. And my new identity was this road trip photographer that sold prints, and so I can remember actually, I made a decision. Okay, I'm done with that. I'm going to concentrate on this other thing. And I can remember a week or two after making that decision, I got a call from a new client, and it was Financial Times magazine based in London, but they had a New York office, and they wanted someone to do portraits in New York. And that's something that I would have thought, great, that's a really good thing. But I said, no, I'm done with that. And so
how hard
I'm
up
basically
were you for money at the time?
Very hard up.
Wow. Okay.
One thing that I've always, I'm not very good with money, but I'm also, and I think one of the reasons for that is I'm really not very motivated by money. Obviously, I don't want to be super uncomfortable. But, I want to be able to pay the rent, pay for my food, and obviously be able to take the trips. But I'm not striving, it's not a motivation for me. It's not my main motivation. Obviously, it becomes pretty important when you're in debt. That's not nice. Yeah. But when I was young, I never thought, how can I make money? Maybe I should go into this kind of world or that world, and that's how I can make money. It was never about that. It was always more like, what do I want to do? What am I going to feel good doing, comfortable with? Even if it was kind of crappy jobs, I never wanted to get tied into that kind of corporate world or whatever. But so, and actually that was initially, so I'm with my partner now, who is a sculptor, and we've been together about 18 years. And kind of early on, I was kind of turning stuff down. Things like, do you want to shoot at this event, kind of a party or something, where I'd be just kind of shooting people at a party or something like that. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I'd rather be the person at the party, not the person taking pictures of someone at the. That just wasn't. I had this whole identity thing. I didn't want to be that person. And I remember her saying to me, "Well, we're dating each other now, but let me tell you, if we were married, this would be a problem. You like turning money down because you don't want to do it. But that just wasn't me." And I even remember saying to her at the time, I'd rather be stacking shelves in a supermarket than using the photography to do something I don't want to do. And also, I'd seen friends in the past who started out in a career, and obviously for reasons of paying the mortgage, having kids, that kind of thing. I haven't had any kids. They kind of took something they didn't want to do for the money, and then they got another job doing that, and someone else, they got recommended. They ended up doing that kind of thing that they really didn't want to do as a photographer. Got trapped into it, and then you get seen as that as well. You can't get another kind of work because you're this type of photographer, and that's the work you've got to show people, and et cetera, et cetera. So I was aware of that. Anyway, so bringing you up to date, I'm still going out on the street on the weekends. I cut back to I do Friday, Saturday, Sunday. In the winter time now, we've got a house in Joshua Tree and kind of going out there for 4 months after Christmas. But I'm still doing the street thing, and I'm still selling. Click now became this store so Christiane Sell, who owns Click, she had a company that she started that was women's clothing called Calypso, that expanded into home goods and this type of thing. And she sold that company a year or two before I met her I read in W Magazine for $60 million. But she had like a 5-year kind of a thing where she couldn't compete. She couldn't sell the same kind of thing she used to. And so she started the photography gallery. And when that 5 years was up, she started selling like everything. And now she has 12 stores, several in California, New York, St. Bart's. And there's still a big emphasis on photography, that large-scale limited edition prints, but home goods, fashion, books, jewelry, and everything. And she's I think her great talent is curation. So it's all very interesting and tasteful. And when this first started, this switch. I thought, how cool is this? Is this cool? I'm in a photography gallery, and now it's selling, cushions and things like that, sofas. And it actually turned into, it was a good thing, because people who would not have walked into a photo gallery looking for photography, they were in there looking at other things, and they would see the prints on the wall. And also a cool thing with this, so when there's a photo gallery, or an art gallery, there's a show on the wall, and it's up for a month. And then, if you're lucky, your work's in a drawer somewhere in the back room, or it might be put away in storage. But with Click, more often than not, I've got something up on the wall, because it's not like that. There might be 10 different photographers' work, and so it's there. People see it, and people say, "Oh, that's cool. What's this?" And so they've gone in there for another reason, but they're exposed to the work. And so that's been working for me up until now. So sorry. It's kind of a monologue. No,
but
that's kind of my story.
Honestly, that's probably the longest I've never interrupted someone. So that's saying a lot.
All right.
For me, I'm very interested in what you're saying. And, aside from the obvious T-shirt, glasses, and headphones uniform that all photographers seem to get, that's sweet. Your everything you're saying parallels what I'm going through and what I'm thinking and feeling, but am on the uphill, close to precipice of trying to make that change, or knowing that my creative, mental, emotional state is shifting in some way. I went to architecture school, practiced as an architect, and then have worked as an architectural photographer for, almost 20 years now, probably. And that's, I really enjoy design, and I enjoy working with clients to capture it. But as you know, commercial work is a very different thing for a creative person than art or expressive work. There's an amount of loss of your emotional, mental, whatever state when you're working commercially compared to when you're working as an artist. It's a very different process. And it's hard to explain to people who aren't of the same disposition how working commercially, doing something that you enjoy, takes so much out of you, and kind of also robs that joy of creativity to some degree. There's a burnout or just a tax on you over time, where you start to sense all right, I need to shift creatively, or I need to open new doors creatively, because I'm getting spent in a sense, and you need that change, you need that inspiration. So I'm working through a whole bunch of different stuff to try and figure out how to continue to be interested and progressing while still being able to pay for the wife and 2 kids at home. So I have a little bit different pressures on me, but your professional trajectory, while having different data points, is still fundamentally the same trajectory that I find myself in, and sensing that something needs to change. That idea of what do I identify as? Do I want to be the event photographer? Do I want to be the commercial photographer? No, something feels weird that if I use this passion or creativity that I have towards photography, if I use it in that way, I may get captured and then essentially juiced over the next 2 decades in that way. And that's not the juice I want to lose in this. So there's a real interest in the overlap for me of what you've gone through. Now, thank you very much for sharing that whole trajectory. I have some questions here that are meant to throw you off, to get you to answer in a different way, where you might have a really simple answer, but I'm going to see if I can get something different out of you. But so first of all, why photography? Why not painting? Why not sculpture? Why not poetry for you?
I think there's two reasons. One is that I noticed that I would always be kind of more interested, on the whole, in photography. When I'd be in a museum and I'd see a series of photographs, I'd be drawn to that. I'd like it. It would be maybe easier to understand. I'm not saying, every now and then I'd see a great painting that would move me, but I definitely was interested in photography. Also, I'd see it in magazines. I'd see more of it, and I'd get drawn to it. I think the other reason is that for me, it was easier. It was an easier way to make images than I was kind of good at art at school, but I'd never developed. I'd never practiced and tried to become a painter or anything like that. But I thought, well, if I pick up a camera, I can probably make an image. And I have thought about maybe in the future, I've thought about it a bit, try my hand at painting or whatever. But it was an easier entry point, and I found I had kind of a facility for making photographs and a good feel for it, and over the years got better at it. So I've got something that I'm quite good at. But never really a very. I'm not interested in. I'm interested in seeing moving images. A great movie. But the whole video thing, I know a lot of photographers now are required to take photographs and shoot video, content for online. At the moment, that is not interesting to me and never has been. Having said that, I actually had, somebody wanted me to make a video of me talking about the work and maybe shooting, and a couple of years ago, we were out in Joshua Tree, and my girlfriend, with my old iPhone, shot some stuff, and I edited and put it together, and it was kind of fun, and I liked that. But I'm much more interested in that strong still image, as far as me creating something. So I don't know if that's an answer, but yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
To me, there's if I think about the difference between the different creative outlets, and for my experience, it was first and foremost, I have to make money. I don't know.
Sure.
I grew up in an
that's
environment.
Super important. Yeah.
Yeah, I grew up in a very practical family environment, to where you're either a teacher, doctor, nurse, lawyer, something that actually makes money, and you don't need a significant other to live with while you're trying to express yourself. Like, what do you call a photographer without a girlfriend? Homeless. That kind of thing. I get it. When I told my dad I was gonna become a photographer, he laughed and said, "You can't raise a family on that." And it worked out. I'm fine. But there's this itch of working creatively compared to working expressively or artistically, which is why I'm really enjoying talking to you. That when I look at, okay, I want to be a painter, what's the medium, and what is the known thing happening here that the observer of the art can pick up on, compared to sculpture, compared to photography? If I'm looking at a painter, I know that what they're doing is a complete interpretation of reality. There's no sense of an ability to say this was a real situation in some sense that then translated into me looking at this. It could be, but with photography, especially photographs that are known to not be manipulated, so more street type photography, there's both an overlay of your interpretation of reality to how you frame it, where you position yourself, and what you choose to focus on, and how you move to capture the light, that then is the expressive part, but there's also what you choose to capture, and you've actually captured a moment in reality that is not distorted unless you're doing something funny with the lens or the camera moving or everything else. There's more so with photography, this idea of this was real at a specific time, where if you were right in this spot right here, you would have seen this thing from that single, point of perspective. Where when I look at it that way, there's something of a documentarian and honesty that to me has become that much more of a pull because of what I'm seeing in photography and the use of AI. Like, I have no desire anymore to create interesting, lit, high production scenes of any sort, because I know what AI can do just with a voice prompt now. And it's kind of like, well, why would I spend all this time trying to contrive something to create this when AI can just do it with a voice prompt? To me, I think I could probably figure out how to get interested in doing that. But my initial pushback on that is that I want to now express the last dying moments of humanity before it became completely mechanized and completely known and completely connected through smartphones and AI and artificial image generation and everything else. There's something about this ability to tell a real story of what reality was like before the wool came over the eyes of humanity to the degree that it's about to, in my opinion. And there's something about art as a documentarian or documentary as art that I think is very valuable and is just an appeal to me at this point. And then when I think of sculpture, for some reason, I have a really hard time being motivated or emotionally responsive to sculpture for some reason. It just doesn't land with me well. I have a hard time understanding it and taking it in. Painting a little more so, but then photography, especially interesting documentary that I know this was actually a thing that happened or a thing that exists, and here's an accurate interpretation of it, but it's framed interestingly and everything. That to me is the real interest on why I'm a photographer and want to work more as a fine art documentary photographer eventually, to kind of call in response to your answer to my answer on that. Second confusing question I'd like to throw at you a little bit.
Can I just...
Yeah.
Well, I was just... I mean, you've kind of brought up something else there with the whole AI thing. And just a very quick thing is... so, one thing I like in a photograph, or in my photographs at least, is you look at it and you're like, what's going on here? Is this real?
It's confusing at first almost.
Yeah.
And then it explains as you look at it more.
They're simple images, compositionally usually. But you're like, what is this, And I'm shooting on film. And anyway, so the last couple of weeks, I'm on the street with my prints, and I get all kinds of people stopping by. And a couple of things lately, people are saying, oh, is this AI? And so it's there's that whole thing happening. But and also very quickly, as you were talking about why you got into photography, of course there was, I hadn't mentioned it, but initially there was it seemed like there could be a career path, because I was aware that I had to support myself, and there wasn't a thing where, okay, I'll become a painter. It's like, okay, this could be an artistic pursuit that could be a career, with photography. So there was that. So, sorry, just a couple of things while you were talking.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to find, like, when you first start out, you're like, I love working creatively. Wouldn't it be great if I could get paid to work creatively? And then after you start and actually accomplish that, you have to pinch yourself in the process. Like, this is amazing. People are paying me to do this. And then after a while, you realize that you've essentially sold your joy in that process to a degree. There's something in that when you work commercially, there's something that the expression of you and the joy in creativity, it's just it can become a high mileage situation where you have to step back from it to allow, to gas that tank back up. Or I'm not exactly sure how to deal with it, other than everyone I've spoken to at roughly my age, mid 40s, that's worked as a creative is coming to that point of feeling like just a deep level of like, I've got to do something else for a little bit here, because it, like that intense energy of creativity that you start out with, once you pattern what you do over and over and over again, it becomes less of a creative act and more of something that you know how to do. And you start to function like a machine rather than a magical creative result that just happens in the moment. You start to function more like a machine. So I can walk up to a building, up to a living room, kitchen, bathroom, bedroom, and know exactly how to shoot it pretty quickly. And there's not a lot of difficult creativity in those moments for me. It's just, I've done it so much, I know how to do it, and I can do it really well, and I can charge
and probably
a lot for it.
Very little excitement too,
Right. There's not a lot of surprise other than showing up to the building for the first time and seeing how incredibly creative the clients that I have are and how difficult the things are that they do. Then it, comes to that. That's where I find this joy of interacting with the client and creating a really, amazing aesthetic around the talents and abilities of what they were able to accomplish and then share with the world. And that's the weird thing in what I do, is that we're contriving a scene to convince people of something of potential that can be of use for them. Whereas if I'm wandering around a down and out deserted desert town like Van Horn, I'm not trying to convince anyone to buy anything, to buy any design services. I'm witnessing like this, I would call it this almost gold rush of like, this town was a boom town at one point, and then it kind of plateaued and it's drifting away now. And here's the leftovers of the things that were good about this town, but then like faded away. And how is the town currently still living? And to me, it's always interesting to see the backside of buildings where no one thinks anyone's going to look, and to see if you can compose that to be interesting and beautiful at the same time, where everyone puts all their ideas on the front of the building, and in the back, they just kind of throw the trash cans and everything else. But so often there's these colors and these spaces and these moments that are really interesting and tell you a lot more about the people that made these decisions in a very honest way. And there's something to that honesty to me that has a lot of appeal to it that I like to capture. And if you can capture that honesty in a way that's beautiful, I feel like I'm actually showing people something that expands their understanding of humanity in some degree. I don't know how to articulate that any better than that. So,
yeah, good.
So next, intentionally difficult question. Without using the word photography or art, how could you explain what it is you do?
I'm not sure if I could. Well, I guess, one of the initial, the thing that initially got me doing these road trips was actually a desire to be in those places. And this was something I've been thinking about as well with the whole AI thing, is, maybe I could become accomplished at that and make some beautiful images, but I'd be sitting in front of a computer, at home. And a big part of what I do is getting out on the road on my own, discovering things, seeing. I'm often in super beautiful places that I don't take a picture of.
The beautiful places seem like a cheat or something. It's weird.
Yeah, and it's all been done by other people better, and it's it's difficult for me to come up with another take on it. But, you know, that's a big part of it, being out, you know, getting out of the car on the side of the road in the middle of Wyoming and just feeling that and seeing what's around me, and being on the road by myself, and just finding surprising things and all of that. So that's a big part of it as well. Obviously, you know, you say I can't use those words. I mean, that's one of the main reasons I'm out there and what I'm trying to do. But it's not only that, you know. It's certainly getting out of the house, and maybe I'll become too old one day to do that, and I will try to create things at home. But
you just have to do it slower.
Yeah, but that's not what it's all about for me. You know, the big part of it is being out in places I've never been before, or I'll revisit places and seeing how they've changed. But the whole idea of the road trip is very it's a big part of what I do. I don't even, you know, when I'm set up at my table in Soho, I get lots of people. I've been going out there now for 14 years. And so I get lots of people passing by, and they stop and they chat, and quite a few of those are photographers shooting street stuff. They've always got a camera on them, and they're trying to get stuff in the streets. I've tried a bit of that, and a big part of it is that it's just not aesthetically, it's not interesting to me. It's too busy. It's not the feel I'm drawn to. But also, I think there's not that sense of adventure, of, you know, packing up the car, heading out, who knows what I'll find, and I'm going thousands of miles, you know, and being out on the road as an intrepid adventurer. I guess you could have that feeling walking around the city, but it's all too familiar to me.
Yeah. No. For the last 3 or 4 years now, I've been getting on the road come late December and driving from Maine all the way down across the country and out to California and back over a few months. And I've just loved doing that, because you go through such geography, you go through such culture, but also at the same time, such odd consistency across thousands and thousands of miles as an American experience, but also such incredible diversity and weirdness and different architectural patterns and everything. I find that I'm very drawn to spaces devoid of people that have been made by people, that are just something about it to me is a response to probably what I do commercially, making places very contrived and perfect all the time, to find a space that you're not trying to but you're not trying to overly interpret, but just show honestly what's there. And just to wander, I find that for some reason it feels very therapeutic, and it feels like the right thing to do for me. I don't know how to better say that.
Yeah.
So
just quickly, one thing just quickly occurred to me there, and you know, when you saying you're from Maine as well, and I was looking through your Instagram, and I saw a photograph, and I commented that it looked very kind of Edward Hopper, and you're talking about, you know, places devoid of people, and I know as a kid, I would see Edward Hopper images, and it kind of gave me a funny feeling, you know. I was very drawn.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Kind of a weird melancholy, but I was very drawn to it, and I wasn't quite sure what it was doing to me, but I kind of liked it. It was a little unsettling, so being out in those empty, quiet places and maybe photographing a solitary building or something, I think there's something there's a connection there with the Hopper paintings, giving me a similar feeling,
Yeah, Hopper is so beautiful, but there's something slight, just like a 10% of haunting to them. But it's
a little unsettling.
Not in the colors. It's not in the. But there's something there's always an aloneness to it, or a singularness to it, or melancholy, or it's a moment that's like, if it were in a movie, it would be a stretched out long cut that was reflective and full of tension, but still in a very serene, calm state. Hopper's work always has had that same effect. And there is something in those dusty desert towns that I love framing things in a very, very forced way, because it tells you I like it because that forced perspective combats a lot of what you get with photography, and that people will just kind of like random here and there. Oh, this great moment all of a sudden. What I like to see is there's this great space, and you need to take in this space, and like I'm pointing my lens at something that has some references in it that are relationships that need to be understood, either over like the boom of a town and now the degradation of a town and how people are responding to that. But to me, there's always something that happened before that photograph that can be deciphered, that is very interesting to try and capture in that way. That where I feel if you have a very rigid composition, there's something that alerts you immediately to like, it's almost like a caution sign or something. I don't know what it is, but I'm really drawn to those type of compositions, and to me, they have somewhat of a sense of that Hopper feel, where when there's been a very intentional framing, it's kind of arresting to see an image in that way, especially when you print it large. And that's another thing where I feel like, unless you're, for some reason, I'm drawn to printing photography very large,
Sure.
and kind of feel like if you don't do that, it just doesn't have the same effect. I don't know.
No, you're right. And I never had I couldn't afford it, I guess, or had the reason to do it either, to have large prints, until I got these connections with Click and with, it's actually called Larsen Warner Gallery in Stockholm. And we'll do prints usually up to 50 by 60 inches. I've done a few larger, but the film, I shoot on a medium format film camera and then scan the images, but it holds up really well at that size. And yeah, it was a thrill initially to do my first big print. It's like, wow, it's because I just didn't, they're expensive, and what was I going to do with it as well? We do actually have a nice large print in the Joshua Tree house, and I love looking at it. I feel like an image should work at any size, but there's an undeniable thing about seeing the work big.
Yeah, there's something about it's very confronting. You can't dismiss it. It's kind of like you have to go, and it's like taking a magnifying glass but then all right, let's put a magnifying glass on this situation here, but now we can see it large, and you can focus on the different aspects of it and see how they connect and why, and you can really, I don't know, I feel like you can pull a lot more out of it when it's at
you
that
can
size.
almost like walk into the image, and sort of.
Yeah. I love that feeling. Okay, why did you not start out as a road trip photographer?
I guess it just never occurred to me. I'd done a bit of traveling already before I ever had a camera, which seems kind of bizarre these days because everybody's got a camera in their pocket, But I'd done a bit of I'd taken trips to America before, where the first time I went, I flew to New York with a friend, drove to California. My friend had a camera, actually, but I didn't. This was 1978, and I've sometimes thought, oh, wow, if I had the sensibility that I have now, and I guess maybe the ability after several years to be able to take some nicer photographs, that would have been cool to have been shooting in 1978 going across America. Yeah. But I didn't have that, so that's just the way that was. And that was exciting and thrilling. And then I'd gone back a couple of times with friends, and then I actually took a trip I flew to San Francisco and hitchhiked around. And the idea was, I think I was going to be there for 2 or 3 weeks. But I ended up, by meeting a young woman from Germany who was flying away before I was due to fly away. I decided to miss my flight. I came up with this harebrained scheme to, at the time, Freddie Laker did this super cheap flights, but he was doing them from Miami to England. And so I thought, okay, so I'll wait like a week to have time with this woman, and then I'll hitchhike to Miami and fly back from there, because I had a little bit of money. I didn't have much money, but I thought, oh yeah, I could do that. Anyway, I ended up running out of money in Austin, Texas, and got work in a kitchen and stayed there for like 6 months, and so writing postcards home to my dad every now and then on the farm, saying, I'll be coming back soon. Austin. So
how
I kind of
is it to be bad with money as an artist?
Oh, I'm not sure it is. I don't think. I don't know. I don't think it makes any difference. But I guess if it depends if it becomes a motivational thing, maybe. If your motivation is, if I do it this way, I can make a lot of money. That might make things make your art not better, and you might also, I don't know. Sometimes you'll see an artist and they have success with something, and they're with a gallery or several galleries, and the gallery are like, okay, that's that worked. Let's do more of that. I remember reading an article in the New Yorker years ago about, is it Laurie Simmons, I think, who is the mother of what's her name? The woman that did Girls. Anyway, she had this thing where she photographed dolls, and it was a huge success, and she had a show and everything sold out, and it was fantastic. And then she thought, oh, this is great, but I want to change it up for the next show. And so she did something completely different, and the whole thing like bombed. Nobody bought it because she was like the doll woman, And then I think she kind of started going back to that, and then she was photographing people like they were dolls or whatever. But I'm sure you can get trapped into something because, and especially maybe, say you're successful, and so you get yourself a couple of nice cars and a big house and an expensive lifestyle. There's a pressure to maintain that, and so you just can't afford to just totally change it up and take that risk, because otherwise, how are you going to maintain that lifestyle unless you're still shooting the dolls that were super successful? I'm not sure, but
yeah, it seems like if you're too good with money, you might not go through all the experiences that inform your experience to be able to create and pull from, for one. Like, if your life's just way too comfortable, you're not going to be all that beneficial to the rest of us, potentially, as an artist, especially in some sense, in my opinion. And then, like you're saying, if you become, the curse of being an artist that becomes known for something is then the idea is like, well, keep doing the doll photographs, no one's going to buy it, and you're going to be out in the cold. So it's a really hard and difficult line to walk. Like with stand-up comedians, they'll work for a year on a set, and then they'll have like 1 hour after a year. They can't keep doing that 1 hour over and over anymore. In the past, you could tour around the country and no one would have heard about you from one place to the next or had heard your set. But now it's like you have to flip it over and start from the beginning again. With an artist, if you get too specific, like dolls or whatever, you're stuck in that thing, and then you have to keep doing that thing, and that's not that different than being a commercial photographer at that point. So that's a weird issue to get into. That money is, I don't know. I guess that's why people always ask, like, well, what would you be doing if money weren't an issue? And if money weren't an issue, I would still be trying to drive around and just see and experience new and different places and photograph them in a way that translates the very interesting parts of those places that I find interesting. And to me, that I like that. Money or not, I would choose to do that. But now I'm forced with the idea of like, all right, I got to figure out how to make money off of doing that somehow, or win the lottery, one or the other.
Yeah, so. Yeah. But you are taking the trips at the same time as so you're managing to do that. Do you find? And I haven't necessarily seen that. I haven't seen this in your personal photographs, but one thing I have noticed. I can remember when I was in England, I used to get a magazine, and they'd have competitions, where, each year, photography competitions, and it was more of a sort of a commercial photography magazine, but there'd be personal work, and I could almost always see that the personal work was done by a commercial photographer. I think it was very hard for their commercial work to not seep into what they were doing, instead of just starting from a point where they were not a commercial photographer. I think there's somebody that kind of pulls it off pretty well, who's done both, and that's Nadav Kanda, who does these beautiful photographs. And I think he, made his name as a commercial photographer and then moved into the art world, and he seems to be able to pull it off. But I think it's a hard thing to do. I don't know what you think about that. Yeah, you're coming
from a whole different mindset of why you're pointing your lens at something. And to break from that and to still do it effectively, how do you not revert to the patterns of behavior and choices that you've relied upon to, establish your success? So yeah, that would be a difficult thing to get out of.
Is that something that you're aware of when you're out shooting for yourself?
No, I'd never thought of that. Like, what are the ways that you see that bleeding into people's work?
I don't know. It's kind of hard to put my finger on. Maybe it just looks a bit too polished or something. There's something, and it's maybe. And having said that, because I was just going to say, it's kind of attention grabbing, maybe, because it has to be in their commercial work. Having said that, I think me selling prints out on the street has done that to me somewhat. Because, I'm there, I've got a table, I've got prints on display, and I want, people to stop and take a look. It's got to catch their eye. And I think when I first started going out, I kind of realized that, and I started to do something which I think has become a big part of my style, and I like, where I say, maybe I'll just increase the saturation on this, or I'll bring out the red, or I'll do something that has more impact. And I feel I've got to be careful to not go too far with that. I want it to still be believable. You can kind of imagine being in that place, and it's not like, you get these HDR things that are horrible.
Yeah.
But I'm still trying to catch people's eye, and it's probably the same on the gallery wall, where, it's not easy to sell large, expensive prints. It's got to kind of get someone's attention. And so probably that has actually had an effect on what I do. And I don't feel bad about it, but I think it's true. And maybe that's a thing, a habit that a commercial photographer has, that it's sort of, like attention grabbing or whatever, that they cannot leave out of their personal work. And when you see someone who's just an artist and came through art school, and I don't know, it might be more conceptual or whatever, maybe that doesn't have that same quality.
Yeah, when I'm looking at a scene in a town that I find interesting, I definitely default to starting out with a one-point perspective, probably because of my architecture background and how we'd sketch out and then hard line out elevations and everything else. I look at it that way, and if it looks great or if it looks interesting, I'll always take that photo. And then to break from the one-point perspective to more of a 2-point, is kind of the next how I move around it. And I always find that if you can dead center and flat elevation something, that it's striking, and there is just something that I prefer about that. And it's not as much that I feel that people like it and respond to it, as much as I arrogantly feel like you need to look at this. And I don't know if that's a good thing for an artistic endeavor or not, but for me, if you can find a good one-point perspective, for me, it's just, I don't know, to have the horizontals and the verticals going just right, and then to allow the life and the environment and the rest of that to be the interest. There's something like, I feel like I've done my part to frame someone up to see what I'm seeing. And because of those things being aligned, the rest of the thing is easier to understand. That's kind of my take on it. We'll see how that pans out over time.
Yeah, I find when I'm actually taking a photo, I try to, and I think I'm largely successful in not thinking about the afterlife of the photo. I'm just looking at the thing. Is this interesting? How can I make it look the best I can? This sort of thing. And I'm just, sometimes I'm just taking one shot, actually, once I've decided, because I've got like 10 shots on my camera.
Right.
But I'm just, I'm just trying to take a good photo. And I'm also aware that it's fine to do something that's, I'm fairly consistent with the type of photos I take, but it's fine to take something that's a bit different, a bit off, and that's all right. But I'm not thinking about what I'm doing with it afterwards, and I think that could definitely be detrimental if I was. And also, I don't really know. Even if I did try to do that, I'm not sure what's going to sell well or whatever. And then afterwards, I will actually, because what I'll do, I'll take a photo and then it won't even get developed for a long time. And so I'm not seeing it immediately. It's not like a digital thing. I haven't got that. But I do like a little sketch of what I shot that day and right where I shot it. So I kind of remember it. And then after I've done, however many, I will sometimes look at it and think, maybe this one I could sell on the street. Maybe this one can go into a book. Maybe this could be good for a large print through the gallery. But that's all like after the fact. And then that other thing I was talking about with it being, kind of maybe catching people's attention, that's also after I've then scanned the image and I'm trying to make it a bit more whatever. But when I'm actually taking the photo, none of that stuff's in my head. I'm just thinking, does this look good? So that's
experiencing that, feeling that, and then moving around to kind of adjust how things foreground, middle ground, background, align, light. Yeah.
And it's more of an instinctual thing as well. And, where you're looking through the camera and maybe I just move a bit this way. And then it's, that feels good, and occasionally doing that, very occasionally there's a real buzz where you're like, this is a shot, but it's not, I guess I am subconsciously, because I do kind of like things to be fairly ordered. And so I'm doing all that stuff as well. And actually, so I've got a kind of bad habit of I'm holding the camera and it's kind of a bit like this rather than straight. And so I don't worry about it too much. And then when I get the, and plus I shoot with a Mamiya 7 and it has some little lines, which are the edges of the image, but it's not very accurate. And I'm usually getting more than that. So I don't worry too much about the edges of the image. I know I'm going to get a bit more. And when I've scanned it, then I'll like straighten it up, and maybe I'll take a bit off the edges and all that kind of thing. But I'm just basically just looking and seeing how it feels to me, even though those feelings probably are dictated by the lines and one thing and another.
Now, how do you do your best work as far as the environment that you'd like to be in and the mental, emotional headspace that you're in? Explain to me that environment and also the internal environment that allows for you to do your best work.
Okay, so the environment is normally a place where there's space around an image, which is usually, a place where there are wide open spaces, like the Western deserts. I did take some pictures recently, like in the whole rainforest, and that was a different kind of space because everything was kind of green, so there was a uniformity. And that was actually a thing that I've been playing around with lately, where I've just started placing objects within the environment. And so I had this red square that I put in amongst all of this green. So there is the thing you're looking at, and then the whole surrounding was green. So that was almost like a kind of a space. So space, usually kind of quietness, nothing too busy. The internal thing is interesting. I took a trip a few years ago where I went, I was in California and I drove to Florida and back. And somehow I just wasn't really feeling it. I did get one or two good pictures on that trip, but it was a real struggle. And when I got back, I felt I hadn't got very much. I had a similar trip in Wyoming one time, and And a couple of weeks later, I was feeling, I wanted to go out again, because I just felt for some reason, I just wasn't getting it. And I went back and I just spent a week, and I was just in the deserts of Southern California, and I felt much better. And I was seeing things, I was more enthused, I saw things more easily, and I got better shots. I did a couple of times, I've done things where I've taken a photograph of something, I've gone back through that place, taken a look at that thing again, and took a much better picture of it because I was just in the right headspace to see it better and be more, be more creative. So I'm not quite sure what that is, but there are definitely times when I'm doing a better job of getting good stuff than others. Sometimes I get quite stressed when I'm on a trip. If I feel like I'm not getting good images for a couple of days, I think, oh my God, I'm not getting anything. Am I ever going to find anything else again? And then I'll take a couple of shots I like, and that calms me, and I'm happy. But I'm not quite sure what it is that allows me to feel better and take better pictures.
Yeah, I have found that the different mental emotional states dramatically affect what I'm able to see. Like,
right.
If I'm rushed or if I'm whatever, I can't even see the things that I find of interest compared to when I'm, all right, this is all I'm doing right now. I'm wandering around and I'm taking this place in, and I'm photographing it. That's valuable. This is what I do. Like, there's something about like the practical side of my head can get a little the better of me. Is like, what are you doing? You're never going to make any money off this. Go focus on something where you're going to make some money. You got a lot of stuff to pay for, blah, blah, blah. It's like, if you can just calm down and do this kind of meditative practice in that moment of just slowly wandering through and finding the things that say the things about the space that are worth communicating, and then finding the way to aesthetically communicate that is some worth that gets translated into that, from the abstract into the more concrete utilitarian thing that you can hand over to someone else in a print that gives them that emotional experience, or that way of opening up a memory for them, or the desire for an experience to go and see, that I think is so valuable and beautiful in what you do in art. That there's a very, very deep perception of truth within it that you can communicate through those works of art that are not so easily articulated in word or whatever else. That is the value in what you do and what I'm trying to do. That is the thing that if I can value that, I can somehow get the rest of me to be at a little bit better place of calm to say there is value in what you're doing here. Calm down, take your time, be present, and communicate what you see. And to admit to yourself that that's a value and worth doing can be a hard thing at times, which I don't know why I feel that way, but I do sometimes. And if I can get past it, I can do better work, which is odd. So there's that.
Yeah. Something just occurred to me as well. I think there's a danger in feeling too good as well. I've had experiences where, so normally what I'm doing, I'm driving along and I'll see something, I'll stop, get out, take a picture of it. But a couple of times I've done things like where I got to a small town and I started walking around, and I thought, oh, that looks cool. This looks cool. That looks good. And I'm taking pictures and I'm like, yeah, that's a good one, And I've even had that experience maybe in New York. And I'm kind of getting too enthusiastic about it and thinking everything looks good. And then I realized, once I've got the work back and everything, that I wasted like 3 or 4 rolls shooting stuff that it was kind of interesting, but actually not really, because I was just feeling good about it. And and I think, wow, this looks. Sometimes when I've been to a good exhibition in a museum or something, I'll walk out and or a movie maybe, and walk out and I'm in a heightened state and everything looks cool and good to me and interesting. And I think there's a danger in that as well. You know, it's kind of hard to judge, is this really good or am I just feeling good, you know? So I've had that
there's
experience.
an aspect of what you're talking about that I enjoy going through the Midwest in the very populated areas in the very, very gray and oppressive times of year, that there's something masochistic in that to me, I like to photograph. And there's like these moments that are just, but you can also kind of make them look interesting and beautiful at the same time. And I feel so like, it's kind of like going to the zoo where it's like, whoa, look at this viper, look at this lion. I would never want to be in that cage, but it's so cool to be here and see this. And when you go through the Midwest plains areas, like in winter, fall, or not fall can be very beautiful, but in the really difficult parts of the seasons, where it's, the snow on the side of the roads, it's all black and gritty and it's just oppressive, but there's such interest and beauty in it as well that there's an odd attraction for me in that I like making images out of that kind of stuff for some reason. So there's that.
Yeah, well, that's good. At least you know what you like, you know.
If that works for you, that's great. Yeah. So what process do you go through to get your best images? Is there a way that you're like, all right, I get up at this time and I spend some time on that, and then I go out by myself and I walk, or I got a skateboard and I ride it around, or I take a bike, or I drive, or like if you find a good place to go and photograph, what's a synopsis of your process that works well for you?
Well, I'm by myself. You know, it's like a solitary pursuit. I drive.
On the entire road trip, you typically like to be by yourself?
Always. I've never.
Okay.
You know, I have a couple of times taken pictures when I've been with my partner. You know, we've kind of taken a day trip from the Joshua Tree House. Maybe we went down to Bombay Beach one time, and
That's a great place.
I've taken, crazy place, yeah. And I've done some pictures, but when I take a road trip, I generally, or even just when I'm taking small excursions from now that we, what I always used to do was I would fly someplace, rent a car. Spend 10 days, 2 weeks driving by myself, spending the entire time by myself. The early days, I didn't even, I had a cell phone back in England, but I didn't kind of like hook it up when I got to the States. So I was just totally out of contact with anybody.
That's nice.
But that's not the case now. But so I would do that. That would be my process now. So I got some money when my dad passed away, and I bought my first ever car when I was 65 years old. I mean, I'd driven when I was back on the farm. I used to drive a pickup truck, and then I'd lived in big cities where it really is a pain in the butt to have a car, and then I would rent them when I'd take the road trips. But I have a car now, which lives in California. And
now, what did you get?
It's a Subaru Crosstrek, which is a really nice little car. It's got the 4-wheel drive. It's pretty good, on dirt roads, and it was kind of inexpensive as cars go. But I bought it new, and and it gets great mileage. I get like over 35 miles a gallon with it. So I was happy with that choice. It's a comfortable car. And so I'll take little trips in that when we're at Joshua Tree, just go out for the day or half day or a couple of hours, as well as the big road trips. But I'm always doing it by myself. I think I don't want to think about what anybody else is feeling or what they want to do, or I get up early. Maybe the person I was with, they don't want to get up early, or they'll take a long time getting out of the motel, or they're hungry, or they're not hungry, or they don't want to see what's up, up this dirt road for 60 miles or something.
Right.
And so I just don't even have to think about, or maybe the person's not in a good mood, or all that kind of stuff. It's just not what I want to deal with. And I'm sociable enough, and I'm fine when I'm not in that situation. But when I'm doing the photos, I'm out there to do that. I sometimes have to remind myself, and I'm getting better at this as well, so early on, the early trips, I was just, wow, this is great. I'm fascinated being out here. Then I went through a period where I was kind of not appreciating enough where I was and just worrying about getting good photos. And now I had to remind myself, hey, this, you got to be enjoying yourself and appreciating all this beauty or whatever there is. And now I've been much better with that now. I got back into that. But I know I'm primarily there to get photos and not to be just having a road trip, with my partner. So it's
now,
and the way you're thinking is different, thinking about the pictures.
Yeah.
And you might miss stuff too, It's really easy to just be in a conversation and not be looking at the landscape and seeing what's out there,
Yeah, if you ask my two boys and my wife about that process, I'd be like, "Oh, Dad's stopping for a photograph again." I'm stopping constantly, like, "All right, just real quick," and so it's rushed and everything else, but it's what I got for now, and I'm super appreciative that I'm able to do it. But yeah, it's I can imagine by being on your own, you can lose yourself in the process a lot more thoroughly and be a lot more present and get probably a lot better results. How important?
And my partner's super appreciative and supportive, is great. But I'll see something and I'm like, is that interesting? And I'll drive for like 2 or 3 miles thinking about it and turn around and go back.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not interesting, or maybe it is, but it's that could be annoying, But anyway, sorry, Go ahead.
Yeah, no. So how important is equipment to you, the actual camera you're using, and why have you chosen to stay with film rather than go digital?
Yeah, so I'm really not very interested in gear. I'll generally have like a camera that I use. I used to, when I started out, I had a Nikon 35mm camera. And it was weird. There was a point where I started thinking I'd better have a medium format camera. People doing covers at magazines and things seem to be shooting. But because there's 2 things. I never went to college to learn about photography. And also, I always used to have this weird kind of a lack of confidence thing where there were certain things I felt I couldn't do. My dad claims that I could read when I was like 2 years old. And that my mum used to kind of, show me off doing that. But when I was in the village school, I was like the last kid to learn the alphabet, because it's like, how can you remember an entire alphabet? And then I didn't read a book, and I was very good at English, and it was one of my best subjects. I was good at writing stories, the whole thing. I didn't read a book till I was about 21. I was like, how could you read a whole book? And I had this thing about, I don't know if I could shoot a medium format camera. Like these guys, they went to college, they're professional, they know what they're doing. And I'd been, shooting professionally for several years at this point. And then I did buy one, and I'm like, oh, okay, it's just the same. It's
Same thing, a little bigger.
You load the film a bit differently. It did actually change my way of shooting, because what I used to do, I used to shoot the portraits, and I'd often get like 5 minutes with an actor or something. When they're doing, the journalist would get 25 minutes, I'd get 5 minutes, and in a hotel room, that kind of thing. And what I used to do is I used to speak to them. I liked it to be naturalistic, and so I'd rattle off a couple of rolls if I could in that 5 minutes, knowing that most of that stuff is wasted, because maybe they'd be blinking or they've got weird expression. And if I could get 2 or 3 great moments out of that, that would be good. So then I was getting 35 shots on a roll. Then I'd go to the Mamiya 7, which is a 6.7. It's got 10 shots on a roll. So I cannot afford to be, I might shoot a whole roll and it's not good. So I slowed down. I was more deliberate. And of course, with the stuff I do now, apart from the light changing, maybe things are not usually moving. So it's fine. So it's the thing about sticking with, so I shoot with one camera with one fixed lens, and it's an 80 mil, which with a medium format is very similar to the way we see with our eyes.
It's kind of a 50 for 35.
Yeah. And I don't have to worry about, should I, say I had like a zoom lens or a whole bunch of different lenses. It's sort of thinking about, maybe I should change this. Or maybe, no, this is what I've got. Let's deal with it and make the best I can. I like to keep things very simple. And it's a very simple camera too. I will use a handheld light meter just for consistency. So I keep it simple. I don't want to even think about, I do carry a Contact 645 with me, because the Mamiya, you cannot get in close. If I wanted to take a picture of a can of Coke and just kind of frame just around that, you can't do it. You can't get it in focus. So I do carry another camera, but there are entire trips when I never use it. I always think, well, I should take this just in case. Anyway, so I keep it simple. As far as the film thing, so, when the digital cameras first came in, I thought, well, I'll have to go digital. And I certainly would have done if I'd carried on shooting for other people. Because they would just want it immediately, and they just want all that stuff. They wouldn't want to be dealing with someone, shooting film, I don't think, a lot of the time. So I thought, well, I'll have to do it. But at the time, my options were to get, like Hasselblad had a medium format film camera, and it cost like £30,000 or something, which was more than a good car. And I was like, well, I can't afford that, but so I'll just wait and see and get what I can. And then, I moved out of that world. And I kind of just realized, I quite like the way I'm doing this, and it works. I like the simplicity of the camera. I'd picked up some digital cameras with all these menus and things, and I'm like, I'm not a very technical person, and I'm like, what the hell is this, And then there's the whole thing of the amount of images. I've seen people shooting and they're shooting like hundreds of images. And I'm like, what do you do with that? You got to edit it all. You got to look at everything. Is this one better than this other 30? There's that. There's also, I quite like, and I'm just making excuses for this, I guess, but I quite like not looking at the back of the camera and thinking, is this any good? And then taking another, I'll just take a picture. It looks good to me and move on, I'm not saying will never go digital. I've got nothing against it, apart from I just like the way it works for me. I quite like having all the negatives as well, tell you the truth. Of course, they could get destroyed in a fire or a flood or something. I've got the images as well, the digitized, scanned images. But that's also a little bit scary if all you had is the, digital images. And I'm just not a gear person, so I haven't lusted after this or that latest digital camera,
Yeah.
So it might change. Film's getting very expensive, and I do occasionally think, it might be nice to just, be able to see things quicker or to experiment a bit more, maybe. But I find I work quite well within restrictions. And I'm restricted with that. I know I've got 10 shots. I'm not playing with different lenses. I've kind of learned what looks good with that lens, with that format. And I quite like, I don't like too much choice, I think. I'm just kind of, let's just try to do this well. So that's my answer to that.
So I ask you that because I'm running into realizing I think I may feel the same as you, but I don't ever want to use film for some reason. I can't totally say why, but I don't like being in a dark room, and I don't like the thought of the added expense and everything else. But I find myself moving towards that way of shooting. So when I started out, I'm all about the technical computer, immediate ability to see feedback on your creative outlet, and like that very fast turnaround was like, whoa, this is great. But I'm finding now that like my gateway drug was the Fuji X100V. I got it's only got a 35 lens on it, and I kind of understood what they were doing with that, and I was like, oh, I'll go out and limit myself to I have to move around to then. And I found that being limited in that way did something good for me. So I've started going more now. I always wanted like a zoom that I could just very immediately go tight, go wide, whatever. Now I'm gravitating towards like manual focus and prime lenses, and like the X Pro 3 Fuji, that like you can only check the image if you pull down the back of the thing, and all they give you on the back of the camera is a little film readout, like what kind of digital film you're using. And it seems very odd that camera companies, the most expensive and the best selling camera companies right now, figured out that there's this target of the market, that people who want to have more of an analog in the moment experience, like Leica with their M series, or even the Q series a little bit, or like the Fuji X Pro line, or the X100V, where there's this limiting factor and more analog dials and everything else that make you more present in the moment of actually working to create these images, rather than like right now I have a Sony that I'm just disgusted with. I hate it, the feel of it in my hands. I hate the color science. I hate how fast and well it works, which is an odd thing to say, but I've oddly find myself looking at like $8,000 Leica M11 or 10 bodies and these crazy expensive manual focus lenses, and thinking that would be even more enjoyable of an experience for me to have to go out and slow down and work with a rangefinder and actually work on the focus and take your time. And for some reason, I'm finding like I want to get, for this outlet, wandering around and taking photos like you do of these road trip spaces. I want a camera that's harder to use. There's something about limiting yourself and slowing down that adds to the whole experience and adds to the actual end result in capturing that image, more so than if I had the best zoom lenses, the best performing camera body as far as the quick technical aspect of it, which I don't quite understand why that works like that. But I'm finding consistency both in my desires and from people I talk to like you that are saying, yeah, something about slowing down this process of taking these photos where you're in the moment, showing reality in the most beautiful way possible, but being honest about it. There's not a lot of manipulation as much of the images after the fact. That kind of thing to me is where the appeal is, and that limiting factor of the equipment becomes, it's not about the equipment. I don't want to get all technical. I want good equipment that's very simple, that takes a little more time and a meditative process of visually, aesthetically communicating what I find of value here. So, okay, interesting to hear your take on that, and it kind of agrees with what I'm feeling, but not really quite doing yet. So that's a good trajectory for me to potentially fall into, to know that is consistent with other people as well. So the last thing I'd like to...
Sorry.
No,
yeah,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, if I had started shooting digitally when I started, I could see that would probably be very difficult to then go to film, but I didn't. And so it's, that's a big difference, I think.
So I have an opportunity to put up a show of probably 10 to 15 prints at a client's architectural office that's opening up later this fall. And I've got to go through and choose of the more fine art photographs that I like to take. I've got to choose which ones to get printed large, framed, and put up. It's going to cost me a ton of money, and it's going to be a massive risk, but it's down the road that I would like to find myself spending my time doing. It's a valuable thing for me, and a potential risk. But what would be your advice for one, how you work through choosing the images that you choose to get displayed large and put up, and what advice would you just have in general in that process facing your first solo show and having to fund it on your own?
Yeah. Will they be for sale?
Yes.
Okay. Well, so there's I guess financially that there could be, you get some money back if you're lucky.
Potentially. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a difficult one. I've got this thing where, because I do the thing on the weekends with the smaller prints, I've kind of, it's like a little experiment, going in front of people and seeing what works, or even what works together. Because I have like a wire basket where I've probably got like 50 prints now. And it all, to me, has to feel like it holds together as one body of work, has to work together. And so often I'll come back from a trip and I'll print up several new prints. I take them out there. I put it with what I've already got. And often immediately I think, no, this doesn't really work together with this kind of, and so it's a bit like, you put together a book and it's got to work. You might have a picture that is strong in a way, but it just is out of place with the rest. So I kind of have this experimental space where I can see where things work together, what maybe what, as it's for sale, what people like, what they'll buy. And when initially when Christiane from Click stopped by my table and liked things, she is like, well, how are we going to do this? Because you're selling prints out here very inexpensively. And, maybe we just have to have different prints for the large limited editions. And I didn't want to do that because I had already been out there for several months. I kind of got a feel for what works and what people would buy. And it's not easy to sell those big prints. And so I didn't want to either give her the stuff that I felt was the strongest and the most likely to sell, and then leave myself without that stuff. And on the other hand, I didn't want to keep the stuff and give her things that I felt would be harder to sell.
Right.
So, I kind of have that. I have that. It's a kind of an advantage having a test run out on the street with the images. I'm not sure. I think it's, I used to, when I used to have a physical portfolio and I used to go in and see, photo editors at magazines and this sort of thing, or, or record companies. And there used to be some pictures I'd have in the portfolio. I thought, oh, this is okay, this will be fun. And then when I actually sat down in front of someone across the table from them, I kind of sometimes would feel an urge to apologize for one of the pictures and said, well, I know this maybe isn't all that great, but I thought it was kind of interesting. And so there's that reality of putting it in front of someone and then understanding how you feel about it. So I don't know if that would be useful to make a selection and then, with someone you respect, maybe show it to them and see how you feel about it then. Yeah. You're going to have to think about, it's hard to know what people would actually buy, to tell you the truth. But
there's a degree of which you just have to say, these are the ones I really like, and that's what you get. That you kind of have to rely on that more so than what you think people will buy as an artistic choice, and then you just have to hope that it is the right thing to do. But to do it otherwise is to kind of undercut yourself, like we were talking about earlier. That you don't want to start shooting for what you think people will buy. It's important that you communicate the truth that you see. So it's a hard one.
There's how you want to be represented as well. This is what I'm about. There are a couple of pictures that I've got, or one in particular, I think that I do sell on the street, and I actually took it away for a while, and then I brought it back, and it's something that is kind of a bit obvious. I wouldn't be happy to say this represents me. It sells. There's a couple of them actually. They sell well. People like it. But when I came to do the book, I didn't put them in the book because I'm like, this is not what I'm all about. It's not terrible, and I'm not, but or I wouldn't actually have it out there either. But it's kind of borderline. And you just got to feel good about what you're saying. Hey, this is me. I feel this is really strong. And not that, okay, I know people like this and people will buy this, but that's not what I'm about. So I sell on the street in New York, and generally, what quite a lot of people who would do that kind of thing, they've got, they've got pictures of iconic New York buildings and things, and it's like, well, it's tourists, they'll like this, but there's no way I'm going to do that because it's, basically when I started doing that, I'm like, well, this is what I've got, this is what I'm about. I hope people like it, Right. And I'm not going to put out something that, yeah, you know, this, I know it's kind of corny, but I know people will like this or will buy it, you know. So I guess you just have to feel about what you feel really good about representing you, you know. I guess that's the thing. And there I am, maybe not following the money again, you know.
Well, I think to be a successful artist, for one, you have to be not that great with money. So you're constantly turning your attention back towards your work rather than how could I use this money to compound on itself and play a trick where if I put it away or how about I take this money and put it into an experience that then turns into more work that then it's like to some degree you have to be responsible, and working as an artist is your only option. And then you have to be able to stick it out long enough to become successful and honing in on that thing that you actually do. Whereas if you're good enough with money, you'll go make money and you won't create art as much. Or if if you have too much of a trust fund, you're not going to have enough discomfort to have the sensitive perception that is that kind of thorn in the side that gets you out there and seeing things and thinking critically. And there's something about it where too much ease just doesn't translate well for an artist for some reason, I don't think.
I think that's probably true. And your best work and probably your best chance of making a niche for yourself and making a name for yourself is probably to just follow your instincts and show people the stuff you love, I guess.
Yeah. So I will try and do that, and hopefully it won't be too successful. That's how you should. Hopefully I can just break even. That's all I need to worry about. But I have to get going because I have a person coming in for a portrait and another podcast here in a second. So I can't express how much I really appreciate getting some of your time to listen to your story, listen to your trajectory to get where you're at. It's kind of creepy how the expression of your story and your trajectory and how you articulate it is exactly how I felt and am going through this process, and seeing how you felt, how you worked through it, and where you've arrived to gives me some reassurance that if I work hard and have some amount of talent, I might be able to have a somewhat similar trajectory. It's not impossible, we'll say. So sure. I really appreciate being able to hear your story and to glean some knowledge from your experience. So thank you so much for that. I love your work.
Yeah, no, it's been really interesting.
I'm going to have to figure out how to get Bob's oil on my wall here soon, because I love the colors in it. I love the retro look of it, but I also love the connection I have to where my life started that I've never been back to. So if I at least just have one photo that I love on the wall from my birthplace.
That's actually, that picture. So I'd seen a photo of that place, I don't know, like 6 years ago or something online. And I'm like, that looks cool, you know. And actually I think it was at night or in the evening. It was all lit up and nice. And I'm like, wow, it was just this, it looked great. But I thought, it's in North Dakota, you know, and it's a long way to go for a trip. I mean, I'd say I do long trips, but it was kind of away from a lot of places where I was going. And then eventually, it was the year before last, I guess, I was in Joshua Tree, and I'm like, you know, I'm just going to go there. And of course, I didn't know how it would look when I got there. I didn't know if there would be like ugly cars parked in front of it or whatever, if it would work. But I thought, I'm just going to go there. I mean, basically, what I'll usually do is I'll kind of have a kind of a rough plan, a couple of places I want to go, and then I just hope to find stuff along the way. But I'm just go to Grand Forks, North Dakota. You know? So I did, and it was April, but it was basically there was like one road to get across Wyoming because everything else was closed for snow. And when I got there, it was 5 degrees when I took that picture. It was insane.
In April.
Yeah, but I was super lucky. It was actually, they like closed at 5 o'clock or something. It's really bizarre. It's a gas station. And so there was nothing going on in front of it. There were no cars. I took it in the, kind of in the evening, just before the sun was about to go down. It's a nice golden light. And it looked good. But I was fully prepared to be, well, that might not work out, but I've just got to go and check it out, and it worked out.
Yeah, that's an awesome story for a very, very long shot, and actually to get there and the conditions are right. And I love how like you have to study it because it looks like there's snow-capped mountains in the background, but that's just piled snow in a parking lot.
It's piles of snow. Yeah, it's exactly what it is. Yeah.
Nice. Well, Rob, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your incredible work. Really appreciate following you on Instagram and seeing your work. If I'm ever down in New York City, I'm going to have to try and hope that you're out on the street, and I'm going to try and come and see you. So
great. That'd be great. And also, you say you take these big trips in the winter. We are in Joshua Tree usually after Christmas for like 4 months. So,
wow.
If you find yourself in Joshua Tree, we'll have a coffee or a beer or something like that.
I would love that. That would be awesome. Cool. Well, I'll maybe hit you up this winter. And do you know Lance Gerber at all? He's an architectural photographer in Palm Springs, south of you.
Oh, okay.
I was going to do a podcast with him during COVID era, but we both ended up coming down with COVID right before it, so it didn't happen. But maybe next year. So, anyways, I got to run.
Cool.
Also, I'm going to disappoint people. So.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Trent.